Hello, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? We good? No. No? We got a no? Was that a joke? It was a joke. No? Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. This is the culmination of a couple of years of work, so it's great to see this many people out celebrating Canadian basketball and this project that I poured a lot of my life into, and yeah, to see it in a physical copy and out in the world. I'm very excited for people to read it, so thank you guys for coming a day after what happened to the Blue Jays. I know it's not easy to make it out here. We're not going to talk about that other than that brief, but this is about basketball, because this is a basketball country. I know the Jays had a nice little run, and that was all fun and good, but we all know that this is a basketball country, and that's why we're all here today. So yeah, seriously, thank you for spending your Sunday here. More thank yous to my parents, Harvey Ariella, Josh. Yeah, your support in the process was, oh God. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without you, to be honest. It was super hard, most challenging thing I've done in my career, and I leaned on a lot of people, my friends as well. A lot of them are here today, and appreciate it. To my editors, Susan, Tina, Holly, Alex Wong, thank you guys for all the work you did diving into the manuscript, giving me advice, giving me edits, helping turn the book into a collection of stories into something that actually works. I'm very appreciative of all of you. Also, Michael Holmes at ECW Press, he's not here today. He said he has the plague, and I'll believe him, but he is the purchasing editor, and I will be honest, I pitched this book to a number of places, Canadian and American publications. Only Michael was happy with it the way it was, didn't want me to change anything, trusted me, trusted the vision, and so I'm very appreciative to him because he gave me a chance, and I think it turned out well. I'm also thankful for everyone else at ECW Press, Claire, Victoria, everyone else who worked on this. Aurora Shields, my friend taking photos today, not sure where she is, but took the photo on the back of the book, the cover photo of myself, which turned out great. If I do say so myself. Moya, my friend Moya Garrison, who did the illustration on the book cover, also turned out great. I'm going to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the book real quick. I'm not going to try to do this for too long. And then I'm going to invite some very exciting panelists on stage to have a quick discussion about Canadian basketball. So let's do it. So I looked it up the other day. On March 7th, 2018, 5 and a bit years ago, I wrote my first piece on RaptorsRepublic.com, which is a blog started by a man in the back there somewhere and some of his friends named Zarar Siddiqui. He was given a lot of people in Canadian media a platform to write about basketball after feeling like the Canadian media infrastructure wasn't doing enough to cover the Raptors. Myself included, I started writing blogs there. Don't think I was paid at first. That's okay, Zarar. But it was the kind of thing where you had a ton of autonomy and you could write really as much as you wanted to. And that's how I learned to write about sports, was just each season picking up more and more stuff, writing more and more. And eventually I asked Zarar to send me out to Victoria, BC in 2021 to cover the Canadian men's national team, who was playing they were playing a qualifying tournament for the Tokyo Olympics, which was pushed back a year due to COVID. Zarar gave me $500. I stayed at a shoebox hostel. They had a heat wave. Victoria does not have air conditioning. But I got to see Canada play up close and personal for the first time. A ton of the NBA guys were on that team, Andrew Wiggins, RJ Barrett, those guys. And while they lost to the Czech Republic in a game that a lot of people remember, a heartbreaker in overtime, it made me realize really what I wanted to cover going forward. Seeing those guys, seeing the passion they had for their country, seeing international basketball and kind of the quirks that come with it up close, it was really inspiring. And so I'm very grateful to Zarar and the Raptors Republic community for that opportunity. And since then, I started kind of covering more and more Canadian basketball, writing for more and more places. And I kind of took myself out of the Raptors world and started doing that because I realized that every game I went to, every time I went to an NBA game, there was more and more Canadians in the league, and there was more and more Canadians pushing themselves in the All-Star, NBA conversations, all that stuff. And I was deeply curious about why. For so long, we only had 1, 2, 3, a handful of NBA players at any given time from Canada. And all of a sudden, in the 2010s and 2020s, we had 15, 20, and 25 NBA players from Canada in the league this year. So I didn't really understand why there was this huge spike all of a sudden, and I wanted to learn about that. How did we get here? Why was it happening now? And that is kind of the thinking behind the book, is I wanted to learn how this explosion of Canadian basketball happened, and yeah, that's it. Where am I here? So I wanted to learn about, I guess, two things. You know, you see all these Canadians getting to the NBA and entering the best player in the world conversations. At the same time, the national team was really struggling. Like 2021, they failed to beat the Czech Republic, who, tiny country, you know, relative to Canada, hadn't been to the Olympics since 2000. And that's a very long time for a country with so many NBA players to not get to the biggest competition in basketball. And I wanted to kind of square these two things. How come the national team is struggling so much while the grassroots level and the growth of our players is going so well and there's so much success? And I think that's what this book tries to do, is square those two things, is the national team on one hand and the history of that, and then also the grassroots scene on the other hand, and the history of that, and the stories of the individual players who make up Canada's most important players, and how those two things kind of balance and intersect with each other. And obviously Canada got back to the Olympics in 2024 after beating Spain at the World Cup, and after that happened, I kind of knew I had a book idea, and yeah, that's where we are right now. So this book is kind of about, as I said, squaring the current generation with the past. And if you look on the back of it, there's these figures kind of holding up the flag, which is kind of meant to represent the older generations and all the work that they did to blaze a trail for the guys who are currently in the NBA and on the national team. Because again, that is the story of Canadian basketball. It's one where each generation had experiences, learned, and they brought it back. They brought that knowledge back to the next generation, to the kids, by coaching, by putting money into it, by spending hours in the gym, by having kids and teaching those kids what they didn't know. And that's how we've got here. So speaking of that, it's time to get into the panel, because we do have some very important figures from Canadian basketball history here today. And let's introduce them. Okay, so first up, he's an Oakwood Collegiate alumni. You know what I'm saying? A lot of Oakwoodites in here. Let's hear it for Oakwood one time. That's not bad. I mean, I should say also real quick that Oakwood was really my introduction to basketball, because we had the best team in the city at the time. After school every day, we would go down to the gym and we would watch, you know, our team kill Father Henry Carr, Vaughn, all these teams, and it was just amazing to be a part of a school that had such a culture in basketball. And that is really where my love for the game started. Then, you know, my friends Alex and Mel here today started pushing the NBA on me, the Raptors, the Low Post, which I thought was the greatest podcast ever, still do. Yeah, so shout out to Oakwood. Okay, but he's an Oakwood Collegiate alumni. Played at the University of Alberta, Canada's junior and men teams, and at the Canadian Elite Basketball League, where he's a 2-time All-Canadian champion and the all-time leading scorer of the Edmonton Stingers. That's still true? Yes, that's still true. Give it up for Brody Clarke. Another Oakwood Mans, another Oakwood alumni. Played there in the late 70s, won Athlete of the Year before going to St. Bonaventure's University on a scholarship. He also played professionally in England and Ireland before becoming one of the first black players ever to represent Canada at the 1988 Olympic Games. Now he's the president of the Toronto Triple Threat Basketball Club, which caters to inner city boys and girls, kids. And he's also Brody's father. Give it up for Norman Clarke. All right, and last but not least, we have a graduate of St. Michael's College School. We're not going to give him a hard time about that. I know the Oakwood crowd can be rough. He went to Syracuse University, and he was the first Canadian to get drafted in the first round of the NBA draft. He was also the youngest player to ever play for the senior men's national team at 16 years old, before later in his life coaching Team Canada for a number of years and also calling the Raptors games. I guess really since 1995 is when he started calling the Raptors games on radio and TV. You guys know him. Give it up for Leo Rautins.
Yeah. It's a little uncomfortable here with all you Oakwood people. Now you're at home.
I would imagine it is.
This feels like your Oakwood gym.
It's a little uncomfortable with all these tall people around. Thank you guys for joining me. Let's start here. Just, one thing in the book that was interesting is just all the stories about how people get into this sport. I think it's so varied, so different, and there's often kind of like a central figure who helped you get into that sport, whether it's a sibling or a coach or a friend. Can you guys each just tell me a little bit about how you got into basketball and who that person might have been for you to really help inspire you to get into the sport?
Hi there. For me, it started when I was about 11 years old, Western Toronto, around this area actually, just north of here at Central Commerce High School. A gentleman by the name of Harry Gary worked for Parks and Recreation Toronto, and he saw me in the schoolyard one day and after school program and invited me to play basketball, and I had no idea what that was at the time. I had only been in Canada a few years. And I moved to a new neighborhood, so I said, sure, but what is it? And he explained it to me, and he said, just up the road at Central Commons. I said, that's great, I just lived down the road on Shaw, that's perfect. So I started to go and fell in love with it, and he was very much a mentor to me in terms of the sport and basketball, plus just recreational stuff that takes place throughout the city. And I was with Harry for many years, teaching how to play. He coached me and taught me a lot of stuff, and I fell in love with it.
First of all, thrilled to be a part of a panel with two huge legends that I do not in any way match up to, so thanks for giving me the warm welcome. I think that you guys actually probably all know my answer. But, I have a dad who went to the Olympics in basketball, and I actually have a mom who has 2 national championships. 3 kids, so by the time it was my turn to start choosing sports, basketball was kind of already chosen for the other two, and I stumbled into it, and then I got lucky to be the one who got all the height and athleticism. So you kind of come into it as you grow, but for me, I fell in love with basketball really early, and I played until about 14 months ago, and it's still my favorite thing in the world. So I had some good mentors all along the way. I still do. It's awesome.
And they both look like they can play, which really ticks me off. Mine's simple. I'm Lithuanian. And
That says it all, I know that.
all the Lithuanian kids, we play ball. And where everybody else was playing hockey, we were playing hoops at the old Church of the Resurrection. And started playing when I was 8. And then the second part of that is my brother. My brother was pretty accomplished, played for Canada, drafted in the NBA, played college in the States. And my only goal in life was to be better than him. Whatever my brother George did, I wanted to do bigger, better, faster. That's all that mattered to me. So that was my start.
Was there a day where you showed him and you said,
Yeah, and there was a day where I crossed the line with my brother, and I don't really want to talk about it because it still hurts. Physically, it still hurts.
yeah, he made sure you would do that again.
Yeah.
So all you guys played at some point overseas, whether it was with Canada in international competition or it was professionally in overseas leagues, before kind of the creation of the CBL, very new league. Canada never had a pro league, so you had no choice. But Canada never had a reputation as a basketball country. Players were seen as, there was a reputation where they were soft, they didn't play defense. That was kind of the guiding philosophy a lot of Americans at least thought about Canadians back in the day, right? Maybe not.
Maybe some Canadians.
Yeah.
Some Canadians.
I'm curious. No, not that you. That was true, but that was maybe like a thing that was a reputation. But what was it like playing overseas and being one of the few Canadians playing at a really high level at those times? And what kind of pride did you take in that? And how difficult was it at times maybe for you to be one of those few Canadians representing your country then?
Well, I got the mic, I'll start, I guess. I don't know, I think in some ways, Norm might say the same thing I do. I never thought about it as being Canadian. I just played. And, it would be mentioned, when I'm at Syracuse, hey, Canadian, or I'm in Italy, El Canadese, or wherever else. But it was never a big deal to me. I just played. So, and I think my reception wasn't any different. Could you play or not play? If you're Canadian or American, can you play or you can't play? So if you can play, your reception is good. If you can't, people let you know. So to me, it was never an issue, and I think that a lot of people made it being a bigger issue. But you got to remember that Norm and I were just talking before we came up here that the game is trendy, right? The basketball game is trendy, and I was just saying, people think the game was just invented, like the young guys today. And when you go back and look at our years, I told Norm that I got lucky because I played for Canada when I was 16. I got exposure. I had schools that came to see me. All my friends and guys like Norm and Bo Pellick's and Derek Lewis's and Jonesy's and all these guys, they all could have gotten scholarships and played in the States, but it wasn't trendy. It wasn't a thing to do. They were as good as guys I played with. Now it's trendy. Now it's different. Just like the NBA, I could name you 20 guys who should have been in the NBA when I was drafted that were from Europe, Yugoslavia at the time, and all these other places. Brazil, they weren't in the NBA because it wasn't trendy. Now, if you don't have a Euro, something's wrong with you, right? So things have changed. I was always proud of being Canadian, and we had a lot of success internationally, even though there were a few of us doing it.
I concur with some respect to what Leo had to say with respect to being Canadian, being overseas. It wasn't something that we ourselves, I mean, I certainly didn't say, I'm Canadian, yes, great, this is it. It was, I get to play basketball, I'm so lucky, you know, and to be able to travel overseas and have a team wanting you to play for them and represent them, not necessarily represent Canada, because that's not why you were there. You were there for you and to enjoy the sport and do the best you can in that sport. And the good thing was the reception of the host country or the host team that you played for was exceptional. And the best thing about that was you got to play, you didn't have to work as hard as the NBA, you didn't play as many games, you didn't practice as many times. You had a lot more time for yourself to think and to do other things instead of just focus on nothing but basketball 24/7. You know, the injuries were less, okay? You had more freedom for yourself to do and read and do whatever else you want and to travel around Europe and see other places that you don't even think about doing or even consider doing, except for the fact that you were across the river and here you are. You have other things to do and things to see. So that's how I perceive it.
Yeah, I had the luxury of going to play overseas once Canada basketball's reputation already kind of preceded me. My first year in university was the year Andrew Wiggins was drafted first overall in the NBA draft. So the spotlight started to get on Canadian basketball in a lot of ways before my time to become a professional and go overseas and chase the ball in that way came about. And I felt like I definitely concur with the fact that like once you're over there, you're just a basketball player like anybody else. You're loving the fact that you get to play and somebody's going to pay you to do it, and you feel like you fit in. American, German, Polish, former Yugoslavian, you name it. You're just a Canadian, but everybody knows that Canada's got guys like Shea and guys like Jamal and guys like Dylan, and they're watching the NBA and they see that Canada has a basketball culture now, and it's really cool to represent that. But in a similar sense, if you can't play, you're getting sent home. So it didn't matter what your background was.
No funny.
Yeah. But one thing that I'll find interesting, going over there as a Canadian in today's political climate was a very interesting experience for me because it's easy to see yourself and be proud of your country when you're in your country. It's a very different thing to get off a plane in Poland with an American who flew in on the same plane as you and go through customs, and it takes you 3 seconds to get through customs with the exact same documentation as they have, and it takes them 25 minutes. And the level of questions that are being asked, the level of acceptance that differs for a Canadian citizen around the world. Our passport is very strong, and you notice that today, the moment you go anywhere, you get received well by fans, you get received well by locals, just by nature of being Canadian. So the fact that the way was paved from a basketball perspective well before my time is amazing, but I think it also is a big testament to who we are as a country in Canada, the fact that we are now able to, stand up on the world stage from a basketball perspective. We have a world presence before basketball that matters as well, and so now we're kind of just stretching, and it's cool to be a part of that.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the panel, Brody, is because you can also speak to the changes that have been made, from your dad and Leo's time to yours, and how things have changed for Canadians. No, a couple of years ago. But speaking of that, so real quick, I didn't prepare you guys for this, but if anything comes to mind, one thing I loved was hearing stories about FIBA, FIBA's international basketball stories, especially back in the day where crazy things happened, whether it was referees or fans setting off fireworks and cooking and smoke in the stadium, throwing stuff at the players, or opposing teams getting in fights. Is there a story that comes to mind for you guys? It could also be an overseas pro story that will always stick with you. Yeah.
Well, one that stands out with me is going to Brazil to play in a tournament. And we were down there playing, and Brazil was a very good team back then. We were one of the tops in the world. And we entered the stadium, and they have a mesh fence around the court. And I'm like, what is going on? Why do they have a mesh tent around the court. I wondered why they had a mesh tent all around the court, and no one can go there, and they have security guards. And the exterior, the game is going on, it's a good game, and becomes physical and more physical, and before you know it, fisticuffs. And before it got to that point, the fans were throwing their coins at us at the game. So you run up the court getting hit, right? Hit, and getting elbowed. The referee's concerned with what's going on with the players, at the same time not realizing what's going on the court with the players. And so in the end, the focus came down to a fist fight, a brawl, basically a brawl. And we had to be taken out of the gym, finish the court, escorted out with security guards, the army guys there, and onto a bus, and had to be led away with security all around us because they didn't want to lose. It meant so much to them not to lose a basketball game, much less lose to Canada of all people. Because we were like, oh, these guys should have no business being here with us. And the game ended. Nobody won. We just got out there safe. We were home, safe and sound, back to the hotel. No one left the hotel after that.
Man, I could start now and it'd be tomorrow before I'm finished. So I think there's. I'll give you a couple of what I think are funny. Because first of all, this is before cell phones, okay? So there's no cameras, there's no record of anything that happens. So fights, brawls, everything being thrown, referees, it was all there every game, and it became the norm. Like you didn't even blink; it was just normal that it was going to happen. But my mom came to see me. My mom came to see me one time in my whole international career. She came to Spain, and I was in this town, Orense, which is kind of a dumpy place, and this team had undergone a lot of problems before I got there, which I wasn't fully aware of. I was the fourth. You're considered a foreigner, American, so I was like the fourth one on our team. You're only allowed two back then, so there were issues, and but this team hadn't won, and they won 2 games all season. I got there, and our first 3 games were on the road, and we won. And I was averaging like 25, so I thought, we get to the home game, I'm going to be a hero, right? So we get to the home game arena, and this is the only game my mom has ever seen me play in Europe. She's there, and they're whistling and yelling and screaming when I was introduced. I'm going, okay, what's this, right? And now we're playing this game, and we're losing this game. It's a close game, but we're losing. And fans are just whistling and yelling and nasty. I'm going, what's going on? Like, I don't get this. And then the coach starts yelling at me and takes me out of the game about something. And I wasn't seeing Europe. A lot of times they got these boxes around the floor, and there's a big box in the direction I'm going to. And I wasn't really aware of the box at the time. The mayor of the city and all these other people were sitting there. So I'm just, at this point, I've had it. The coach is yelling at me, and I just turn around as I'm walking out. I just did, boom, like this with the finger. I was done. My first game in this town, I was done. And the place went nuts. The coach is yelling at me. I said, you too, I'll give you the finger. I'm lucky I got out of the arena alive. My mom couldn't even speak. But that's international ball back then. Now it's everything's on TV. There's replays. You can see guys used to get. Phil Toaster was a great. Remember Phil Toaster, big farm boy from Alberta, and we play a game. I was a skinny kid, 16 years old, playing. We're playing Argentina. I'm getting beat up, and Phil comes in the game for me. I go, Phil, number 8's killing me. He goes. Play goes up and down. All of a sudden, you see the guy I was talking about laying there, blood all over the place, just out, and Phil just run down the court. Because no cameras, no film, no nothing. So this went on every game, every time, and some of the international contests, like you can't even begin to describe to people, and like there's a legitimate fear whether you get out alive. And so today it's very, very different. I don't think you experienced that, but we paved the way for it.
Yeah, so if people read the book, there's a ton of those kind of stories in there, and very similar ones. I remember one on the jump ball in Puerto Rico. They started throwing bolts and coins, and it hit the Canadian center in the forehead. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Mike Smack.
Exactly, and instead of before Magic Johnson,
7 feet tall, 300 pounds, 4% body fat. You want to hit him with anything? That was a big mistake.
and that was like before the blood protocol, all of that stuff. So he just, smeared it around his face, and they jumped, and that's how things were done. So, speaking of the national team, so Leo, earlier you brought up how at 16 you were identified by the national team, and that helped you get exposure, right? And that helped you get to Syracuse and go on to have this really illustrious pro career playing the NBA and overseas. And Norm also, you guys all played for the national team, but it changed. Like a lot of people here and a lot of young people only know the national team as what it is today, which is Shea representing one of the best players in the world, going to all these big competitions, consistently competing for a medal. They're flown first class, they're treated well, and needless to say, like the national team didn't always have these resources, didn't always have the success. It's been a very up and down journey, right, with the history of the national team. So I want to start here, and maybe this will be different for depending on the age here, but like growing up, what did the national team represent? How important was it for you to get on the team, given the kind of lack of other resources, lack of infrastructure that Canada had to showcase players otherwise?
Well, you got to remember when Norm and I had opportunities to play with the national team, it was very different from Brody. Our per diem was $3 a day on the national team. We were fine with that. Because we didn't know any better. We didn't have any money anyway, so it didn't make a difference. Now you've got guys where money is a big deal. So our whole perspective was different. And we'd start in April. There was one time I started in April, and I went to school at Minnesota my freshman year. I showed up October 15th for first day of practice. That's the whole time I was with Canada, playing for Canada around the world, right? So it was a very different experience. But for me, like I said, my brother used to get these letters from Canada basketball, and trips coming, you're going here. And that was it to me. I'm going, I want to do that. I want to do that. It's amazing. I want to play. And I was lucky enough to play at a very young age and to be able to travel around the world. And here's the thing that people don't understand is we had success. I joined the team after 76 Olympics where they finished fourth. We were always top 6 in the world. Norm as well. You guys had great success in your years playing. And the young kids didn't understand that. In 1982, our team had 8 draft picks. Think about that, 8 draft picks. I think four or how many were first round on that pick. In 1982, nobody knows that. Nobody has any idea that. And plus, we never played in Canada, so nobody knew who we were. But if you think about that, and United States was always the teams to beat. We beat the United States in the United States, and nobody knew. Nobody knew we did that. Funny story. They came in a locker room. The guy that was kind of the director of USA Basketball. He came in a locker room after we beat the United States and gave us the game ball, and we signed it and sent it back. So we were confident. We were a confident group, but I think that's the thing that I think if you talk to a lot of guys that had played at the time, we had a fair amount of success. There were years following Jack Donahue where it became more up and down and a little inconsistent, and it was kind of a drought. But for a lot of early years, there was great success, and I think it's a shame that history, players aren't aware of that, because the game wasn't just invented. And there is kind of I think a rich history there.
Yeah, I'll quickly interject. Like during Jack Donahue's time as the head coach and the 70s and 80s, like Canada qualified for every major tournament, whether it was the World Championship or the Olympics. They placed fourth a couple times. So absolutely, and I wanted to share that too in the book in terms of giving some of the shine to people that don't always get it in this country that help pave the way. But yeah, after Donahue, as you mentioned, there were lean years, and Norm, I think you can speak to that because you had some challenges with the national team, and I think people would be curious to hear about how things, what weren't always maybe fairly done, how the organization didn't always have the resources to do things the right way, and how we really had to learn hard lessons in order to grow from it and be where we are now with the team.
Yeah, I think first of all, wanting to play for Canada hit me when I was 12 years old. That's the first time I knew what the Olympics was. That's the first time I saw basketball on TV, and a friend explained to me this is a competition for the whole world, and I was totally shocked. I mean, for the whole world, yeah. Every country in the world has the opportunity to participate here. And you represent your country. You're selected, you have to go to tryouts, etc. And I said, I'd like to do that one day. So that's what I tried to do. Unfortunately, it took a lot longer than I thought to get to that point where I was given the opportunity to actually represent Canada. A lot of, I think at that time, systemic issues. Number one was a race. I mean, there were a lot of guys that went to tryouts of visible minorities, and they'd all get cut. And I'm like, oh, he's supposed to be all Canadian. He's supposed to be one of the best in the country. This guy's, he's like a star at his university. And it's like, okay, so then I'd go in and think, okay, I'm not going to make it. But then I squeaked in. Obviously, I had something that they wanted or thought they could use for that team, and I was appreciative of the fact that I had the opportunity to play. The issue was I never had a chance to fulfill the opportunity because I didn't get as many opportunities to be on the court in situations where I could prove that I was able to do what they thought I was able to, why they picked me. And over time, it got to the point where there were two visible minorities on the team that actually grew up in Canada, were Canadians. We had a third who was born in Canada, but he grew up in the States and went to university, got drafted, etc. And the situation was such, back then, the way you play basketball and the culture of the sport in this country was not perceived in a positive way as the number one sport in this country, which is hockey. It's a whole different beast. And basketball had to fight, tooth and nail to try and get representative, funding from Sport Canada. And, like Leo said, there wasn't a lot of money for the players. We did it because we loved it, not because we're making money. Every other country, you play for your country, you're getting paid full-time dollars to play for your country. And that's why when you competed against them, it was tooth and nail. They would beat you up and do what they can to win, because if they won, they got paid more money. Whereas Canada, it doesn't matter what you did, you got X, and you lived on X. Okay, so over time, I had the opportunity to play, and I played, and I thought good, well enough to be able to be on the team, etc. And the thing that was really difficult for me to grasp at the time was I would go to camp, I'd make the team, we'd go to training camp, I'd get sent home. I thought, what? And next year, or within that summer, within a month, they'd call me back and send somebody else home and keep me. And this went on for about 3 or 4 years. This is really weird. Why are you keep bringing me into camp, keeping me, go to the training camp, send me home, bring me back? And they would not just bring me back to camp. They would say, call me and say, get packed, we'll meet you at the airport. But I haven't been to camp for 3 weeks. You send me home. But I will be on a road trip again, hopefully as a backup. And I kind of figured out as time went on that, based on the culture of the sport and the way things were at that time, you wanted to have insurance for your team, even though you may not cash in on that insurance. And that was my predicament. The point guard would play as many minutes as he possibly could. as long as they could play him before they put me in the game. So I was the insurance, and I realized that. So rather than, giving up, I would go to camp knowing they're gonna need me, and I'm just not gonna quit because it's what I want to do. And if I quit, I wouldn't get the chance to represent Canada in the Olympics. In so doing that, we went to several tournaments where this individual was not there, and I played every minute, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 every single game. We won those tournaments, and it was interesting that when we got back to Canada the following year for training camp, the same thing would happen. I go to the camp, they bring young guys in, they send everyone home that they didn't want. I'd be in training camp, I get sent home. I thought, well, here we go again. And this went on for 4, 5, 6 years, every single year. Even the year of the Olympics, '88, I think was the best camp of my life. I was in the best shape of my life. At that time, we had 4 Vietnamese on the team. Okay, one of them didn't come to '88, so we had 3 that went to '88. And in that camp, all the players said it's incredible how much you've improved. And I felt great about camp. But now I was brought in at the end of camp and said, well, we're not going to keep you. I was shocked. I was totally shocked and said, wow, really? After '87, what we did, where we went, how I played, how my camp was, and I thought, what do I do now? So the coach gave me a choice. He said, you have 2 choices. You can go home now, or you can stay in camp. I said, I'm staying in camp. If I go home, he tells him I give up. But I said, I'm staying in camp because I want to prove to you I should be here. Camp ended, I went home. He sent me home. I said, okay, wish everyone well. A week later, they bring me back. I'm on the team, and I'm going to Seoul in '88 to play for Canada. Had I not stayed, I know very well I would not have another chance to go to the Olympics to play for Canada. And it was a tribute to the support I had from my friends in Toronto, inner city population, who said, no, you got to keep going. And players on the team that knew me well as a person outside the sport of basketball said, no, you got to come back. You just be ready, be ready. At that time, one person verbally said to me, just stay ready. We're going to call you back. They have to call you back. I went home and stayed ready. And sure enough, I got brought back and I went to Olympics. So that happened, and being the Olympics, when I had the opportunity, I played well. And we finished 6th in the world that year, and U.S. lost that year. And then a couple years later, next the dream team was born, because at that time, U.S. was not sending their pro players, but other countries were sending their pro players. And I think they advocated on behalf of U.S. basketball that we should also be allowed to send our best. And as a result, the dream team was born, and everything's history. But in that Olympic situation, one of the things that really shocked me coming out of the Olympics is I was brought to have a meeting with the coach. And he stated to me that there were complaints that I was not supportive of what's going on in the team, which shocked me because I was an ardent supporter. I was very vocal, very strong in the bench, very supportive. And I wondered whatever happened there, what caused that. Unbeknownst to everybody else, the coach after the Olympics and he retired, came to Toronto, took me out for breakfast, and explained to me that it wasn't his idea to cut me in the first place. And I thought, but you're the head coach. Second, he said, I'm not sure what happened, but I'm sorry to say that so-and-so were saying that you weren't very supportive, and I didn't think I could play you in this circumstance because you were a negative influence on the team. And I looked at him and said, but you're the coach. I looked at him, okay. And he said, I apologize for that, and I should have done better, and I should have given more opportunities. I said, thank you, but it's a little late for that now because that's all behind us. But I'll never forget that. Okay? And I'll never forget, in trying to be on this team. At one time they had 2 teams for one summer. They had enough funding to have 2 teams where one went to Cuba and one went here to play tournaments. And I was on the team that went to Cuba. We had a different coach in charge there. And that coach said to me, you can't shoot. You don't know how to play defense. You're not a good passer. Your defense, I mean, you make bad decisions, so I'm not sure. But I'm the starting guard. I'm like, but I'm the starting point guard in this team. I'm playing every minute on this team. But you as a coach come and tell me this. Why? To this day, in my mind, I have an idea why, but there's no point in talking about that. And to this day, when I see that coach, he looks at me, I look at him, and I turn to walk away, and he turns to walk away. So that's my experience, and it's unfortunate that that experience turned a lot of people off kind of basketball, because at that point in time, they were inviting players that were young and skilled, and the basketball talent was starting to grow, and the visible minorities did not want to attend because of the way they treated those of us that were there before their turn came around. And Leo talked about it was up and down. That was part of the up and down. Had a big thing, had a lot to do with the up and down with respect to players not wanting to play for Canada because they didn't feel like they were respected. And they had to do things a certain way all the time, otherwise they were going to be sent home. And that's what happened, and players, they took Canada basketball 10 to 12 years before they worked that out. And now that players are getting the opportunity to be who they are as athletes and play the way they can to show their talents, Canada is now proven.
Thank you, Leo. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that was a huge part that I didn't know about the history of the national team. And talked to so many people about what you said. People believe there was a quota on the national team, how many visible minorities. People talk about how you put together a bunch of guys from Toronto and we could beat the national team. You hear a lot of this stuff, and I thought it was important to include in the book and here right now too, because we don't talk about it enough. Leo, I know you wanted to say something. I also wanted to ask, like, when you were a coach, you still were dealing with this stuff in 2005, 2010, when you were the head coach of the team.
So, obviously, when you're hearing that noise, right, if the perception is it's an old boys network, it's racist, right, if the perception's there, that's what people think, then that's what it is. Whether it is or it isn't, it's what it is. And there was a lot of that happening. And so, my old boss, Wayne Parrish, is here at Canada Basketball. And, when I came in, one of the first things I wanted to do as coach, I went to the AAU guys. I went to the communities. I was like, I want everybody to know this is Canada basketball. I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you're from. It's Canada basketball. All right? There was an all-black tournament in Nova Scotia. All right? Best black players in Canada go down there and play. I hear about it, and I ask Canada Basketball, like, what's going on there? Oh, yeah, it's a great tournament. I go, why are we there? No. Why aren't we there? Right? So, stuff going on, and fortunately, I think that, Wayne and there was a whole idea to change this, right? To change it and try to bring in the best young kids, because our young kids were our future. Bring them in, and tell them, hey, if you're good enough, you're going to take this guy's place. You'll take his guy's place. I don't care. Can you play? Right? And offer that incentive to know that it's not going to be run this way anymore. Because, like I said, it was, I'd seen things happen. And when you're a player, you can't do stuff. And then I was gone, but when I came back, I said, I've been hearing the same things. I've seen the same things. I'm talking to guys. I go, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And fortunately, like I said, enough people care to change that, and now it's a whole different situation. But I know for players like Norm, Dwight Walton, Dwayne Yearwood, you go down to Tony Sims, it's a painful experience when you see it and you're going through it, and there's no reason for it, And fortunately, that's done with. But like I said, it wasn't fun for anybody.
Yeah, and those names you mentioned certainly played a part in changing it, and Leo and Norm, you guys too are certainly a part of that change. So give it up for them, because we're running late here. But Brody, I want to ask you, like, growing up like a couple decades later, what was your perception of the national team coming up, and did you ever have trouble squaring that idea of when they coming for you with the junior national team, and did you ever have trouble squaring the idea of like, is this something that I should do based on maybe some of the treatment of my dad and other people that I'm sure you had heard about?
Yeah, I think in fairness, like I was sheltered from a lot of it growing up. I don't think that I had a full understanding of the hardships that were sort of brought upon my dad and some of the players in his era when I came into the system, and when it was my turn to just start going through all of the different levels. Like now we're talking about, years after Leo's time as the head coach, Canada basketball is built up a little bit more in terms of how they're running grassroots stuff. We've got, every Sunday night at U of T, targeted athlete strategy going on with Rowan Barrett and RJ at age 10, and everybody from Andrew Wiggins down to, Deshaun Pierre and these guys who are still playing overseas, down to me in grade 9, and you're just like, oh, I show up and Canada basketball wants to build up this entire group of young players that are living in the city of Toronto or the peripheral area at this point in time. And it was, there wasn't really a spotlight shone on what had happened or what the previous regime looked like, call it 10, 15, 20, 30 years before that. It was, I live in my bubble, I really love basketball, I want to get ahead and be one of the best guys in Canada. They're saying I'm in this cohort, let me show up to practice and try really hard. And I would say that taking a 360 or a 180 perspective on that now and looking back, I'm sure that there was still all kinds of strange relationship management stuff going on depending on who was in what room when, which maybe we won't get into given particular statutes of certain people for whom that applies today. But I think that in general, a lot of the heavy lifting had been done. And so by the time it came around to my generation's time to start going through the system, there were little kinks here and there that had to get worked out, but there was more infrastructure, there was more attention being paid, there was more money being put towards basketball, there was more just opportunities for us to show up, be who we were as basketball players, and let the chips fall where they may. And I think that that's a lot of what's led to, the guys, the cream that rose to the top, right? Like, I'm hanging out here, but there's a lot of guys that came through my generation that went and surpassed me 1,000-fold, and this is what we're seeing in the NBA today. So.
I've kept these guys longer than I was supposed to, so we're going to end with this one last question. Just speak a little bit about where we are right now in this moment of Canadian basketball with, I mentioned, 25 players in the NBA, guys in the top leagues overseas. We have a national team that's ranked 5th in the world, just won a bronze medal at a World Cup. Did you guys see this coming? Why not? Is this sustainable, the kind of state that we're in right now? And what do you maybe see in the future of Canadian basketball? You can kind of take it however you want, but your last kind of remark on where we are right now as a country.
I'll start quickly. My remark is I went to the Vince Carter jersey retirement ceremony last year. I don't know if anybody else in the gym was lucky enough to get to be in the building for that, but I remember sitting and thinking to myself beforehand, why are we freaking celebrating this guy? Like, he left us. But then I took a step back and I just tried to put it into a bit of a broader context, and I was like, okay, well, the NBA expanded to Canada in 1995 and it went to Vancouver and Toronto. And by 2001 in Vancouver, it fizzled out. There was not enough attendance, there was not enough attention, people didn't seem to care, it didn't grasp, American players didn't want to go to Vancouver, so the team moved. But in 98, we drafted Vince. And overnight, there was must-see TV in Canadian basketball every single night for 82 nights a year. And so Toronto got put on the map for basketball like this. Not to say that it wasn't getting put on the map beforehand, but now you've got, national TV all over the States showing Toronto. You've got Vince Carter in the dunk contest wearing Toronto on his chest. You've got this whole basketball economy that was driven by the Raptors coming in and changing the landscape and having this marquee guy that you can't really quantify. Like, the way he changed basketball economics in Canada is insane. So do I think it's sustainable? I think it's only getting better and better and better, right? There's more money coming in, there's more eyes on the product, there's more and more good players in the pipeline every year. It's exciting to have been a part of at that time and not understand what basketball in Canada was going through, but I think that's a huge catalyst for what started it, and I only see it going in an upward and to the right manner on the graph. But I'm sure these guys have many more years of experience where that's concerned. So,
Thanks, Brody. I see that what's going on with basketball in Canada overall is phenomenal. There is something about what happened with respect to being more visible in the country itself, not just in Toronto. As a result of being visible throughout the country by having games in the West, having games in the East, having games in Central Canada, hosting games in Toronto. That changed the opportunity that would be presented to all the players. The fact that they could see those individuals up close and know them, see them on the streets, because they weren't considered celebrity status the way NBA players are, but they knew them from the community. That interjected a belief, I think, in the black community that, hey, we could do this because all these guys, we know these guys, we watch them play, we talk to them, we see them. And that helped the growth of the sport in Canada, definitely in Toronto for sure, and out of Nova Scotia, Quebec, without a doubt. And it's only going to get better, as Brody says, and I think it's sustainable also because there's way more individuals participating in this sport, generally speaking. At every level, there's more participation. I think there's better coaching overall. I think there's better understanding what's going on in the game itself. And I think there's more opportunities for Canadians to have a chance to play not just in the NBA, but now we have our own domestic league, and they recognize that there are more players that go in Europe who still get to play for Canada because there's always a conflict with the windows for participation, for competition, and the NBA players are not allowed to go. So the Europeans shut down because they go, and so our Canadians now know they can represent Canada in those windows, okay, to see if they qualify for Olympics or qualify for FIBA Americas or qualify for whatever tournament they need to qualify for. So I can only see it going up and up for sure.
Yep, I completely agree. I mean, I remind people that, the NBA came to Canada in '95. Andrew Wiggins was born in '95. Coincidence? Andrew Wiggins grew up watching the NBA. Okay? When I grew up, you got a fuzzy NBA game every couple of weeks you might see, maybe the Buffalo Braves. This is the impact the NBA had on me. Buffalo Braves played exhibition games in Toronto. I wore number 11 my whole career because I got to see Bob McAdoo, okay, for the Buffalo Braves. I watched him drop 49 on the Boston Celtics, and I was like, oh my God, right? My whole career I wore number 11 because that's the impact of seeing Bob McAdoo in person in a game, right? Now these kids are growing up with watching 300 NBA games. They go to camps, clinics, they meet players. It becomes a reality. They can see it, feel it, taste it, touch it. When I played for Canada, nobody ever saw us. People see them. People see these guys now playing for Canada, wearing a Canada uniform. So the whole picture's changed dramatically. And it's just going to keep getting better. I think people need a perspective. I know last summer in the Olympics, everybody goes, well, look at all the NBA guys, Canada's going to win a medal. Calm down. Because everybody else has got NBA guys, and everybody else has got Euro guys, and everybody else. So when they lost to France, people were upset. They go, how can you be upset? Yeah, it hurts to lose, but you look at their roster, you look at our roster, you look at Serbia's roster, you go, it's a battle now. But we're all on the same level playing field now. All right, that's the difference. We're all in that level playing field. And it's, you could see it, like you go back to Wayne, we could see all the kids growing up, coming up. The talent wasn't here, the talent was down here. And now it all came up, and it's coming up. Every time I turn around, I go, man, more guys. It's crazy. We used to have college players go play they'd be role players at different schools. Now we've got stars playing everywhere. Like everybody, it's a whole different ball game. So yeah, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going, and it's just fun to watch. If you're a hooper, if you're a basketball fan, it's just amazing to see where it's at.
Awesome. That went really well. Thank you guys so much. One more time for the panel. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Really